goal is to have a label dynamically update wherever you click your mouse on the web page. And now you can see how to call Java code from HTML, JavaScript, or jQuery. Now first we're going to add our div where to click. So Wicket ID is equal to mouse area. By the way, if you want to skip ahead, you know how to do all this setup stuff. So you can go to 1 minute 50 and you'll see exactly how to call the Ajax. But right now we're going to go through some basic stuff. We're going to make a web markup container which will replace that div we just made with Wicket ID mouse area. And I'm just going to call the variable the same thing, although there's no reason to. So the container is going to be called mouse area, just as we typed it, case sensitive of course. And now we're going to fix imports, so right click and fix imports, or hit Shift Control I. And now we're going to override the method called onComponentTag. Now this method will allow us to programmatically change the tag, that div tag. We can add attributes. We can actually change the div from to a anything we want, to a span anything. So, but first we're going to just change the style, and of course don't forget to fix imports if you have an error. So tag.put style, we're going to add, this is going to replace the style tag if it exists, and we're going to put the width as 1,000 pixels and the height as 1,000 pixels. Now you could have done that in HTML if you wanted, but I'm just doing it here. So now let's add the mouse area to the page. And now before we do anything else, let's just also realize that this is the thing we're going to be clicking on, so we're going to do tag.put onMouseDown, and now we have an onMouseDown JavaScript function for our div. Of course, we have no idea how to call this Java code and how to change the label that we have in Wicket, or how to save something to the database like a mouse click. So we're going to add an abstract default Ajax behavior, that's a big one, called click. And of course we're going to have to make it a field because this has to be available to an inner class, which you'll see in a minute. So now let's just do click equals new abstract default Ajax behavior, and just open bracket, close bracket. Now fix imports, I just hit Shift Control I. And now we're going to implement the all abstract methods. And over here we're going to be able to do any functionality we want, because our onMouseDown is going to call this method. So let's just call it now. This is a little tricky, but we're going to use the Wicket function. It's called Wicket Ajax Get, and it's a function that lets you find the right method. So our method is going to be click.get callback URL. By the way, don't forget that single quote there. But click.get callback URL, and now that would be enough to just call our method, but we want to give it some information, like the exposition. So we're just going to do nx equals, and we're going to stop the quote, and we're going to put in some JavaScript, event.pagex, because there's an event object. We're going to continue the URL, so we're going to put that quote again, and put another parameter, and y equals, and we're pretty much going to do the same thing. Now this is how you'd build any URL, I guess, so there's nothing too new in Wicket about this, at least about this last part. And then we're going to put those two single quotes, put a close bracket and a semicolon for that JavaScript. So now what we're going to do is we're going to have to actually parse that URL that we just got from that onMouseDown click, because now this click function in the respond is going to be called. So here we're going to get the request cycle. So it's a static.get, and then we can actually, don't forget to fix imports, and then we can actually get the current request, so get request, and now we can get the parameter for this request, and that's going to be x for one of them. Now let's say we want to save this as an integer. You'd have to parse it, of course. Now that might be useful. Let's say you're playing an online game and you just want to save user mouse clicks and not save exactly where all the pieces move. I think that's how StarCraft used to work when they used to save games. So maybe you want to save these things to a database, so you have to get it back to Wicket, as we just did. Now we're going to do the same thing for y, and it can be a string. It doesn't really matter, for our purposes anyways. In fact, it would probably be better to be a string. But so we have our x and y. Now we have to update our label. So we're going to change the default model object, and the default model object is what the label uses to display text. So we're just going to do mouse clicked, and we're just going to display the x and y. Now, of course, you could also use models, which we'll talk about maybe another video. But for our for our purposes, it's not a big deal. So let's just add the X and Y. And now we have to have the Ajax request target. We have to add the label to that as a component. And what that does is it tells Ajax that, hey, there's this component. It's being changed. Let's process the Ajax and add it to be updated. Let's quote unquote re-add it to the page without refreshing the page. Now we have to make label a field, of course, because it's being edited from an inner class. Now we have to add this abstract default Ajax behavior to the page or to a component somehow. It has to be added somehow. And now what we need to do is we have to set the output markup ID true for label, and that'll just put that tag ID, you know, when you have a span ID, for instance, and the Ajax or JavaScript will be able to find the label and update it and replace it. Okay, so that is pretty much everything to get working. Now what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to hit that run and build, that play button again. And it'll probably take a few minutes to get Wicket up and running. But pretty much it's going to start off as, the label will start off as hello world. And then wherever we click, we should be able to update the whole thing with only 10 or so lines of code, which is pretty nice. So now let's look over here. So we got the whole thing working and a click, and you see we got mouse clicked, and all these clicks, it automatically updates the label beautifully. It worked actually magnificently with quite a few, not so many lines of code. Now let's look at the source here. So pretty much this is all it is in HTML, at least. And you'll notice that's the ID, that's the set output markup ID, we had that, and this is the style we put in. Of course, you could have put that in the HTML itself. That's the Wicket Ajax get. And here's this whole URL that helps Wicket Ajax to figure out exactly what to call. And that's, of course, at the end, our parameters that we have to parse from the URL. And that's all the, you know, Ajax and JavaScript stuff that gets inserted. And of course, that's useful because, you know, now you can go to Wicket Ajax debug here in the corner, and one of those files actually puts this nice little thing in, and you can see the span title 3 is that's what's being updated and being replaced. So you see this little message being sent. Thank you for watching, and please comment, you know, rate any suggestions you might have, and hopefully this helped. I knew I was looking for this kind of stuff when I started Wicket Ajax, and it wasn't so available how to call my own methods in Java. So hopefully you enjoyed it, and good luck.